There is a moment, in every life, when the work stops making sense. Not because the work itself has changed, but because the reasons behind it have grown thin. You wake up, you go, you do what needs to be done. And somewhere in the doing, a question rises that won't be quieted. Who is all this for? Maybe it's the job that no one seems to notice. The early mornings, the late nights, the tasks completed and forgotten by everyone except you. Maybe it's the family you serve, the meals you make, the way you show up again and again for people who rarely say thank you. Maybe it's the dream you're chasing in private, the one nobody else believes in yet. Wherever you are tonight, whatever the work looks like for you, there is a truth waiting underneath all of it. A truth that can change the way you carry every single task from this day forward. You were never working for them. Not for the boss who overlooks you. Not for the co-workers who take the credit. Not for the family members who don't understand the sacrifice. Not even for the version of yourself that wants to be seen and praised. You were made for something steadier than approval. You were made to work as an offering. And offerings don't need an audience to be real. Let that settle for a moment. An offering doesn't lose its meaning just because no one saw it given. A seed planted in the dark doesn't stop growing because no one watched it go into the soil. And the work you do, the quiet, unglamorous, repeated work of your days, does not lose its worth simply because it goes unnoticed by the people around you. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught to measure our effort by the reaction it gets. Applause becomes the proof that something mattered. Silence becomes evidence that it didn't. But that measurement was never true. It was only ever convenient. Because it's easier to trust what we can see than to trust what we cannot. Tonight, we're going to lay that measurement down. Picture, for a moment, the version of you who is tired. Not lazy, not unwilling, just tired in the way that comes from carrying something heavy for a long time. That version of you has been working hard and quietly wondering if it's even worth it. Wondering if anyone notices. Wondering if it matters at all. That version of you is not failing. That version of you is close to a kind of freedom that most people never reach. The freedom of working from a place that has nothing to prove. Because here is the shift that changes everything. When you understand that your labor is first and ultimately for the Lord, the opinions of everyone else lose their grip on you. Not because those people don't matter, but because their approval was never the point. You stop performing, you start building. Think about the difference between those two postures. Performing is exhausting. It requires constant awareness of who's watching, constant adjustment to please, constant anxiety about being caught falling short. Performing asks you to live two lives, the one you actually are, and the one you present for approval. It is a heavy way to move through a day. Building is different. Building says, I am placing something real into the world, and its value does not depend on who claps for it. Building says, I can work with steady hands because I am not waiting for permission to matter. Building says, this task in front of me, however small, is worth doing well, because it is not really about the task at all. It's about who I'm doing it for. And that changes the quality of your attention. When you know you are working for the Lord, you stop cutting corners in the places no one would ever check. You stop reserving your best effort only for moments of visibility. The dish washed carefully, even though no one will inspect it. The email written with care, even though it might go unread for days. The kindness extended to someone who will never repay it. These things become sacred, not because they're glamorous, but because they are done with the awareness that they are seen by something larger than the room you're standing in. This is not about perfectionism. Let's be clear about that. Perfectionism is fear wearing the mask of diligence. It says, if I don't do this exactly right, I will be exposed as not enough. It is driven by anxiety, and it never rests, because there is always one more flaw to hunt down. What we're talking about tonight is something entirely different. It is peace expressing itself through effort. It is a quiet confidence that says, I don't have to be flawless, because my worth was never built on flawlessness in the first place. I simply want to offer what is honest and whole, because that is what an offering deserves. There's a kind of rest available to you the moment you stop trying to be enough for other people. Not the rest of doing nothing, but the rest of doing everything without the weight of proving yourself while you do it. Consider how much energy gets spent every single day on managing how others perceive us. The careful phrasing of a message so it lands the right way. The subtle adjustments in tone depending on who's in the room. The constant internal narration of, did that come across the way I wanted it to? All of that, every bit of it, is a tax on your peace. And most of us have been paying it for so long, we've forgotten it was ever optional. Tonight, consider what it might feel like to stop paying that tax. Not to stop caring about people. Not to stop striving for excellence, but to release the specific burden of needing your work to be validated by every person who witnesses it. To do the work because it is good and right to do, and to let the response to it belong to whoever gives it, without letting that response determine your sense of worth. This is what it means to work as though you are working for something eternal rather than something temporary. Temporary approval fades. It has to be earned again and again, every single day, in every new interaction. It is a hunger that food can never satisfy, because the moment it's fed, it grows again. But there is a different kind of motivation available. One that isn't hungry in the same way. One that is satisfied simply by the act of doing something with integrity, regardless of who notices. Let's talk about what this looks like practically. Because it is easy to speak in ideals, and harder to live inside them. It looks like showing up to the job you don't love, and choosing to do it with care anyway. Not because your manager deserves your best, but because the way you do your work reflects something about who you are becoming. It looks like staying patient with a child who has asked the same question for the 5th time. Not because the child has earned your patience through good behavior, but because patience is who you are choosing to be, regardless of what you receive back. It looks like continuing to create something, a business, a piece of writing, a skill, a craft, even when the world hasn't yet responded to it, especially when the world hasn't yet responded to it. Because the early seasons of any meaningful work are almost always invisible. No one claps for the first draft. No one notices the years spent practicing in private. The visible success, when it comes, is only ever the surface of something that was built quietly, one unnoticed day at a time. If you are in that season right now, the unnoticed one, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are in the exact place where character gets formed, where faithfulness gets tested, where the question of who you're really working for gets answered, not in words, but in what you choose to do when no one is checking. There is an old kind of wisdom that says the true measure of a person is what they do when they believe no one is watching, because in those moments there is no performance left to give. There is only the truth of what you actually value. So what do you do in the moments no one is watching? Do you cut the corner, or do you finish it the way you would if the whole world could see? Do you let the frustration win, or do you choose patience anyway? Do you give up on the thing that matters to you because it hasn't paid off yet? Or do you keep tending it, trusting that the tending itself has value? These questions are not meant to shame you. They are meant to remind you of something you may have forgotten in the noise of daily life, that your integrity in small hidden moments is not wasted. It is being written into the person you are becoming. And that person is being shaped for something. Let's slow down here and breathe for a moment. You don't have to carry the weight of being extraordinary today. You don't have to prove your worth through output. You are allowed to simply be faithful in the small task in front of you. And trust that faithfulness, over time, becomes something far more durable than any single burst of recognition ever could. Recognition is a spark. Faithfulness is a fire that keeps burning long after the spark has faded. Think of the people you admire most, the ones whose lives seem to carry a quiet weight of substance. Chances are, what you admire in them isn't a single dramatic moment. It's the accumulation of 10,000 small choices made consistently over years when no one was giving them credit for it. That's what steadiness looks like. It's built in private, and only later does it become visible in public. You are building that same steadiness right now in whatever task is in front of you tonight, even if you can't see it yet. There's something freeing about releasing the need for people to understand your sacrifice. Not everyone will see what it costs you to show up the way you do. Not everyone will know the effort behind the ease you try to project. And that's all right. You were never meant to carry the full story of your labor to every person who benefits from it. Some of it is simply between you and the quiet witness who already knows the whole truth of your days. That witness sees the tears that no one else saw, sees the moments you kept going when quitting would have been easier, sees the sacrifices made in rooms with no one else in them. And that witness is not keeping score in the way people keep score. There is no leaderboard. There is only the steady, patient attention of something that already knows your worth was never in question. This means you can release the exhausting habit of trying to convince people of your value. You don't have to convince anyone. You simply have to be faithful with what's in front of you and let the results and the recognition and the timing belong to something wiser than your own need for control. This is, in many ways, the heart of peace. Not the absence of hard work, but the absence of anxious striving underneath the hard work. You can work with everything you have and still be at rest, because your rest was never dependent on the outcome in the first place. Let's return, for a moment, to the tiredness we mentioned earlier. The kind that comes from carrying something heavy for a long time. A lot of that tiredness, more than we usually realize, comes not from the work itself, but from the invisible weight of needing the work to be seen, validated, and rewarded on our own timeline. Take away that invisible weight, and the same work becomes lighter. Not because it's easier, but because you're no longer carrying two loads at once. You're only carrying the one that actually belongs to you. Imagine setting down the second load tonight. Imagine walking into tomorrow with only the weight of the actual task in front of you, not the weight of proving something to everyone who might be watching. Imagine what it would feel like to simply do the work, offer it honestly, and let go of the outcome the moment it leaves your hands. That is not a small shift. That is the difference between a life spent performing and a life spent building something real. And here is the part that deserves to be said plainly, because it is easy to overlook in the middle of a hard season. This way of living does not mean your effort goes unnoticed forever. It means you stop needing it to be noticed in order to keep going. Sometimes the recognition comes later than you'd like. Sometimes it comes in ways you didn't expect. Sometimes it never comes from the people you thought it would come from at all. But the work was never wasted, because it was never truly for them to begin with. Let this be a kind of rest for you tonight. Rest for the parts of you that have been quietly keeping score, wondering if the sacrifice is worth it. Rest for the parts of you that have been waiting for someone to say, "I see what this costs you." Rest for the parts of you that have grown tired, trying to be enough for people whose approval was never going to be enough anyway. You don't have to keep performing. You can simply build. You can simply show up, do the honest work in front of you, and trust that its worth was never determined by the applause it received. You can release the manager who doesn't notice, the family member who doesn't understand, the audience that hasn't arrived yet. None of them were ever meant to carry the full weight of your motivation. That weight was always meant to rest somewhere steadier. As you move through the coming days, notice the moments when the old pattern tries to return. The moment you catch yourself working harder simply because someone important is watching and easing off the moment they look away. Notice it gently, without harsh judgment, and simply return to the deeper motivation. I am doing this because it is right to do, regardless of who is watching. I am doing this as an offering, not a performance. That return, practiced again and again, becomes a new way of living. It becomes the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs to explain themselves to everyone in the room. It becomes the steady hands of someone who has stopped white-knuckling their way through each day, gripping tightly to what others think. It becomes the deep exhale of someone who finally understands that their worth was settled long before today's task list was written. You are allowed to exhale tonight. You are allowed to release the exhausting need to be seen by everyone whose opinion once felt like it mattered more than it actually did. You are allowed to keep doing meaningful work, hard work, honest work, patient work, without needing every hand to clap in order to know it counted. It counted. It still counts. It will keep counting long after today's silence has passed. So take this rest as it's meant, not as an excuse to stop trying, but as permission to stop striving for the wrong reward. Keep working, keep building, keep showing up in the ordinary, unnoticed moments with the same care you'd bring if the whole world were watching. But carry it lightly now. Carry it as an offering, not a transaction. Carry it knowing that the truest witness to your life has never once looked away. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders soften. Let the tension of needing to be understood by everyone finally loosen its grip. You have been working hard. You have been faithful in ways no one else has fully seen. And none of it has gone unnoticed by the one who actually matters. Rest in that tonight. Let it be enough. Let it carry you into a sleep that isn't anxious about tomorrow's tasks, but grateful for today's quiet faithfulness. You are not working for the applause of a room that forgets by morning. You are building something steadier than that, something that doesn't depend on being seen to be real. And tonight that is enough. Let it be enough. Let yourself rest fully in the knowledge that your labor was never wasted, and it never will be. Sleep now. Let go of the weight you were never meant to carry. Tomorrow's work will still be there, but tonight there is nothing left to prove. There is only rest, and the quiet certainty that you have never once been laboring alone. Let's stay here a little longer, because there's more to uncover in this truth, and the night is long enough to hold it. Think about the story of anyone who ever built something lasting. Not the highlight reel version. The real version, the one with years of unremarkable effort tucked behind the moment anyone finally noticed. Every visible achievement you've ever admired was preceded by a much longer stretch of invisible labor. The long practice sessions no one filmed, the early drafts no one read, the quiet mornings of showing up before anyone else was awake to see it. We tend to forget this because the visible part is what gets told. The story becomes, and then one day everything changed. But the truth is almost always slower than that. The truth is usually, and then for years, quietly, one ordinary day after another, something was being built that no one could see yet. If you are in one of those ordinary days right now, take heart. You are not missing the story. You are living the part of the story that makes everything after it possible. There's a temptation, in seasons like this, to compare your unseen middle to someone else's visible beginning. You look at where they are now, and you measure it against where you are today, and the comparison leaves you feeling like you're falling behind. But comparison almost always deceives us, because it measures two different chapters as though they were the same chapter. You cannot fairly compare your rough draft to someone else's finished, edited, polished work. Let that comparison go. It was never a fair measure to begin with. Instead, measure yourself against your own faithfulness. Not against your output, not against your recognition, but against your consistency in showing up honestly, day after day, regardless of what it earns you. That is a measure you can actually influence. That is a measure that matters. Consider, too, the quiet gift hidden inside seasons where no one is watching. When no one is watching, you get to discover who you actually are, apart from who you perform to be. There is no audience to please, so the only version of you left standing is the true one. This is uncomfortable at first, because many of us have spent years building an identity around being seen a certain way. But strip away the audience, and what's left is closer to the truth than anything performance ever revealed. Who are you when no one is checking your work? Who are you when the only person who will ever know about the extra effort is you? That version of you, quiet, unseen, still choosing to do the right thing, is closer to your real character than the version who shows up polished for an audience. And here's the tender part of this truth. That quiet, unseen version of you is not alone in the room, even when it feels that way. There is a steady, attentive presence with you in the ordinary moments, in the folding of laundry, in the answering of emails, in the patient repetition of showing up for people who don't yet understand what it costs you. That presence isn't grading you on a curve set by other people's applause. It simply sees the effort and holds it as valuable because it was given honestly. This is why the work you do in obscurity matters just as much, sometimes more, than the work you do in the spotlight. Obscurity has nothing to gain from your effort except the effort itself. There is no reward waiting at the end of a well-organized drawer no one will ever see, no reward for the patience shown to a stranger who will never know your name. And yet these moments shape you in ways the visible, rewarded moments rarely do, because they are untangled from the desire for return. They are pure in a way that public effort struggles to be. Let this reframe the parts of your life that have felt small or unseen. The laundry, the meetings no one thanks you for. The quiet checking in on someone who is struggling. The discipline of showing up for a dream that hasn't paid off yet. None of it is wasted. It is forming something in you that no shortcut could ever produce. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from believing your effort is meaningless, simply because it hasn't been rewarded yet. That exhaustion is not really about tiredness of the body. It's a tiredness of meaning, a fear that maybe none of this matters, because if it mattered, surely someone would have noticed by now. I want to gently challenge that fear tonight. The timeline of recognition and the timeline of meaning are not the same timeline. Something can be deeply meaningful long before it becomes visible, and something can become visible long after its meaning was already settled. Waiting for recognition to confirm meaning is like waiting for a sunrise to confirm that the sun exists. The sun was already there in the dark. The sunrise just makes it visible to you. Your effort already has meaning. You don't need permission for that to be true. You don't need a witness to validate it. It was meaningful the moment it was given honestly, regardless of whether anyone else ever finds out. This is, in a way, the deepest kind of freedom available to a person who works hard. The freedom to give your best without needing the world to confirm that your best was worth giving. That freedom doesn't come easily. It's usually forged slowly, through repeated seasons of doing the right thing without applause, until eventually the applause stops being the point. Let's talk too about the moments when doing the right thing costs you something specific. A relationship strained because you wouldn't cut a corner, an opportunity passed over because it would have required compromising something you value, a long night spent finishing something right, instead of finishing it fast. These costs are real, and it would be dishonest to pretend they don't sting. But there is a quiet dignity in paying them anyway, because it means your integrity wasn't for sale. It means you were building something with a foundation solid enough to hold weight. A life built on the approval of others is a house built on shifting ground. The moment their opinion changes, the foundation moves, and everything built on top of it starts to crack. But a life built on quiet faithfulness, regardless of applause, is a house built on ground that doesn't shift with every passing mood of the people around you. It holds, because it was never dependent on them to begin with. This doesn't mean relationships don't matter, or that community and encouragement aren't valuable gifts. They are. Being seen and appreciated by people who love you is a real and good thing, and there's nothing wrong with wanting it. The danger isn't in wanting encouragement. The danger is in needing it so desperately that its absence collapses your sense of purpose. Want it. Receive it with gratitude when it comes. But don't let it become the only reason you keep showing up. Think of your work tonight, whatever it looks like, as something planted rather than something performed. A performance needs an audience to matter. A planting doesn't. A planting simply needs time and care, and the quiet trust that what's placed in the ground is doing something, even when nothing visible is happening above the surface. You have been planting for a long time, even in seasons that felt fruitless. Trust that the planting was not wasted. Trust that growth, even unseen growth, is still growth. Trust that the quiet, steady work of your days is doing something real, even on the nights when it feels like nothing is changing at all. As we near the end of this time together, let your body settle fully into rest. Let your mind release the running list of tomorrow's obligations. There will be time for that list tomorrow. Tonight is not for planning. Tonight is for letting go. Let go of the need to be understood by everyone who benefits from your effort. Let go of the exhausting habit of measuring your worth by the reactions you receive. Let go of the fear that your unseen work doesn't matter simply because no one has said so out loud. None of that was ever true. Your work matters because it was given honestly. Your life matters because it was lived with care, even in the moments no one else was watching closely enough to notice. And the quiet witness to all of it has never once looked away, never once forgotten, never once failed to see the full weight of what you've carried. Rest now in that truth. Let your breathing grow slow and even. Let your thoughts grow quiet, one by one, like lights turning off in a house at the end of a long day. You have done enough for today. You have been faithful in the ways that were asked of you, even the ways no one saw. That is enough. It has always been enough. Tomorrow will bring its own tasks, its own opportunities to show up with the same quiet integrity. But that is tomorrow's work. Tonight belongs to rest. Sleep now, knowing that your labor was never wasted. Sleep now, knowing that you were never carrying it alone. Sleep now in the deep and settled peace of someone who has finally stopped performing and simply begun to build something real. Before we close, let's take one more slow pass through this, because peace like this rarely settles all at once. It usually arrives in layers, the way warmth spreads through a cold room, gradually, until you realize the chill is gone. Think of tomorrow morning, before anyone else is awake. That quiet hour where the day hasn't yet made its demands. In that hour, you get to choose, again, who you're really working for. Not because yesterday's choice expired, but because this kind of peace is a practice, not a single decision made once and forgotten. Every morning offers a fresh chance to remember it. You might forget by midday. That's all right. Forgetting doesn't undo the truth. It just means you'll need to return to it again, gently, without frustration at yourself for drifting. This is not a test you pass once and never think about again. It's a rhythm. Release, remember, return. Over and over, for as long as you're doing meaningful work in a world that loves to measure things the wrong way. Consider how a person tends a garden. They don't plant once and declare the work finished. They return, day after day, pulling what doesn't belong, watering what does, trusting a process they can't see happening beneath the surface. Your peace works the same way. It isn't planted once. It's tended quietly, every time you catch the old pattern trying to creep back in, and choose, again, to set it down. There will be days when someone's criticism stings more than it should. Days when the silence around your effort feels heavier than usual. Days when you catch yourself once more, working just a little harder because someone important walked into the room. On those days, don't be harsh with yourself, simply notice and return. I am doing this because it is right to do. I am doing this as an offering. The applause, or the absence of it, was never the real reward. This return is available to you as many times as you need it. There's no limit. There's no shame in needing to come back to this truth again and again. Even the most steady, faithful people you know have had to return to it more times than you'd guess. Steadiness isn't the absence of drifting. It's the practiced habit of coming back. So let tonight be one more layer of that return. One more time settling into the truth that your worth was never up for a vote. One more time releasing the need for every hand in the room to clap before you believe the work mattered. As your body grows heavier with rest, let your mind hold on to just one thought, simple enough to carry into sleep. I am working for something steadier than approval. I am building something that doesn't depend on being seen. That is enough. That has always been enough. Let your breathing settle into its own quiet rhythm now. In and out. Slow and unhurried, the way rest is supposed to feel. There is nothing left to solve tonight. There is nothing left to prove. There is only the gentle weight of a day well spent, even the parts of it no one else noticed. You showed up today. You worked with care in places no one was watching. You chose patience when it would have been easier not to. That is not a small thing. That is the quiet architecture of a faithful life, built one unnoticed choice at a time. Rest in that now. Let it be enough. Let it carry you all the way through the night, into a morning that will ask you gently to remember it all. Over again, and you will. Because this is not a truth you learn once, it's a truth you return to, faithfully, for as long as you keep doing the work that matters. Sleep now. You are not alone in this. You never were.